Hi, welcome to another episode of Unboxing Entrepreneurship. Today I'm talking to Santosh, who's the founder of Bambaram. When he launched 12 years ago, he had a different concept, something that needed to be explained. So we are going to talk about how he used PR and how he did it himself to gain the credibility for his brand. Let's get right into it. Hi, Santosh. Welcome to Unboxing Entrepreneurship.
Hey, hi Pallavi. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It is totally my pleasure, especially because of the topic that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how an entrepreneur can generate their own PR. So it's an expensive proposition, and I know that you're going to give us some tips of how you have been successful in doing it in the past. But before we get on to that, let's have a quick introduction about what Bambaram is.
Sure. Again, thank you so much. So, I'm Santosh, and I run a company called Bambaram Toys and Games. So, we started that as a toys and games library, one of the pioneer, if we have to say that, almost 12 years back. And now we are into designing games and toys for children, and also we work with corporates. So a couple of games we have published with through Fun School. They have licensed it to Fun School, and it's getting published there. And apart from that, we work extensively with enterprises on serious games and gamification. So just to give us quick context about serious games are it could be in any form, any format. Um, they are games, but it helps you learn something which is related to the enterprise. It could be about cash profitability, or it could be about marketing, sales techniques, and other stuff. Gamification is something which you try to use game-related elements in an organizational setting. So the most abused gamification technique is your leaderboard, points, badges, and other stuff. But there are a lot more to it. So that's what we are working on.
And did you start off with kids and corporate together, or was it one came before the other?
So first we started with the toy library, and I think 3-4 years later we thought, why not design a game? So we actually worked on a couple of workshops with children, and that's when we realized that there is a scope for developing games which are with Indian context. So because most of the games, if you end up playing, so like Pictionary or Scrabble, not Scrabble, maybe any other word related games, the context would always be Western. Like you probably talk about Halloween. When you talk to a government school children, they might not even be able to understand what is Halloween. So the very purpose of the game is getting actually lost. So that's when we thought it would make sense to design games with Indian context. So which is happening right now. A lot of Indian game publishers are actually coming into the foray. But apart from that, I think 4 or 5 years later, we were able to start our own game, and we got it crowdfunded. It went quite well. And then we thought, okay, why not apply this to, it's a accidental thing. One of the corporates, in fact, approached us saying that, would you want to design a game for this particular purpose? And then we realized that, okay, there is probably a good opportunity in the enterprise sector. And we started consciously pitching to companies which we know of, and they were quite interested, and so far it's going quite good.
Awesome. So, it's an interesting concept. Gamification, of course, has been talked about a lot because it does help learning. And
Right.
there are certain areas that it has been implemented well, but I've not really heard of it being very big in India. At least 12 years ago, I'm sure it was not very big. And did you struggle with that? Did you struggle with explaining the concept and the benefits of it?
Yeah, so we went through friends mode. So there is no other option. So there are, thankfully, I've been from a good institution, and I was able to reach out to the friends who studied with me. and who were in a good position. So, and they recommended, and then they recommended me to their friends, and that's how it went. But even with friends, it was not a easy sale. Obviously, because they have to convince their bosses, right? So
Yeah.
we had to do some kind of experiments and see how it works. Um, Surprisingly, it was very well adopted in the not-for-profit sector. In fact, we have done quite a lot of work in the not-for-profit sector. They were quite interested in this sort of games because it'll be very difficult to do presentation mode and with I mean, obviously, the people whom we are interacting with, they require some novelty to start with. So this was a big hit there. So we had worked with quite a bit of not-for-profit sector. In fact, financial inclusion in not-for-profit sector, which turned out to be quite good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I would have thought that with the not-for-profit sector, you would have more traction because, as you say, that
Yeah,
there are a little bit less on resources, technical resources, which is
very
required for a
much.
technical presentation. Whereas gamification also keeps them interested, right? When you're interacting
Yes,
with kids from a certain section, it's what holds their interest, and then they enjoy learning it much more.
right, right.
Absolutely. All right. So we've talked a little bit about what your journey has been like. Tell us what have you done for marketing? What are the main channels that you have looked at maybe in the first 5 years, and what has really worked for you?
Sure. So I'm extremely conscious when it comes to spending in marketing, and being an entrepreneur and starting up, there is absolutely nothing else I can think of.
Yeah.
So what I did was when I started Bambaram, I went through. I like this B2B2C model. So
Hmm.
what I did was I started interacting with corporates to start
Hmm.
with,
Hmm.
and through the HR, I reached out to the parents who are working there in the
Hmm.
companies. So,
Hmm.
which turned out to be quite good for us
Hmm.
because, and the deliveries, in fact, would happen
Hmm.
in the corporates, in the
Hmm.
office space itself, to in the initial years, till
Hmm.
we were able to get some sort of traction in the library concept. Because library, every 15 days is the delivery model, and
Hmm.
it would be very difficult for us to keep it completely open because we need to have that much of logistic power to deliver across a city. So
Hmm.
what we did was go through this route,
Hmm.
and and surprisingly, there was no marketing spend at all
Hmm.
because I go spend, speak to them, and if they are convinced, readily you would be getting an excess of say 50,000 or 25,000 employees there, and
Hmm.
that worked out quite well. So
Hmm.
this was going on quite well, but once we opened it up, then we had to um, go through the traditional marketing. Even there, it was we were definitely resource constrained, and
Yeah.
financially we were constrained to spend too much on marketing per se.
Hmm.
So what we thought was, out of the blue, I ended up calling one of the famous newspaper
Hmm.
and in Chennai, and call them, literally did a cold calling with them, and
Hmm.
thankfully the person who was sitting there, I think I called it around 4:30, and the very next day the article got published. So
Hmm.
that gave me quite a lot of confidence, and said, okay, it seems to be there's no harm in approaching through this. And there
Yeah.
are a lot of people who read this article because it's a
Hmm.
credible newspaper,
Correct.
and it adds to your credibility, adds the
Hmm.
credibility of the brand.
Hmm.
And the very next day, some of the journalists who actually read that article called from their newspaper and said,
Hmm.
would you want to be featured in ours as well?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it went on quite well, and so it was a smooth journey per se. I still don't spend much on marketing per se.
Hmm.
I stick to the traditional um, reaching out to the media and
Hmm.
see if they would be interested in the stories.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it's
Sorry,
Yes.
no,
Sorry, go
go
ahead.
on. I was going to say that definitely it was a lucky thing for you that you called up a newspaper and you got through. Even so, without knowing what response you would get, did you have any doubts
Right.
about reaching out to someone whom you did not know, and someone who kind of maybe makes you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to call this person from this newspaper. Did that phase you at all?
Honestly, there is nothing to lose for me.
Yeah,
I'm making a phone call. I was shameless at that time. I mean, even now I'm shameless,
yeah.
reaching out to people. So I just end up calling them and then said, "Hey, would you? There is something which we are doing, which we think is very interesting, which is very unique,
Hmm.
and would you be interested in featuring it?"
Hmm.
The worst case would be a no, and
Yes.
or probably call me later, right? So
Yeah.
there's nothing to lose over there. So I never had any hesitation per se. We had
Yeah.
lots of rejects even before that in the corporate, so I
Hmm.
was completely fine with rejects. So I just enjoyed the process. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm happy that it worked out that way, and we are still in touch. In fact, a lot of people, I'm still in touch with them, and we exchange notes.
Hmm.
If I find something which is interesting, I reach out to them saying that, hey, these guys are doing an amazing work. Would you like to feature it?
Hmm.
And they feature it,
Hmm.
and that also, in fact, adds on to my credibility as a person.
Correct.
So, because Santosh is referring, it doesn't mean that they are like one Tom, Dick, and Harry. So let's
Hmm.
probably pay a little more attention because
Hmm.
he's referring it.
Hmm.
And I don't refer anyone and everyone to them. So I
Yeah.
also see if there is any good story.
Hmm.
Um, so the surprising truth is, um, as much as we want to get featured, right?
Hmm.
So they
Hmm.
also want to get the journalists, especially the younger ones. They
Yeah.
also want to write about something which is very interesting. They don't want to
Hmm.
talk about the murders and theft and
Hmm.
burglary which is happening in the cities. So they
Hmm.
also want to see some innovative things which are happening in the city, which would
Hmm.
be useful to people who are reading it.
Hmm.
So the minute you think about their position, then
Hmm.
the way you structure your story would entirely change.
Hmm.
You don't want to pitch it as, hey, there's someone else who started a restaurant here. Then you
Hmm.
would want to talk about what they would want to write in their articles.
Hmm.
So, in fact, right now, when I think about designing some product, when designing something, it actually helped me in the whole exercise. Helped me in how I'm able to conceive a
Hmm.
product or a brand,
Hmm.
because it will this be something a journalist would love to write about.
Hmm.
If that's probably one of the check with which I can work on,
Hmm.
because we most of the people who are starting up doesn't have much money to
Yeah.
spend, which means that unless otherwise your idea is unique and there's a component of wow factor which is there,
Hmm.
the journalists would not look into it. And if the
Hmm.
journalists are not looking into it, which means that the customers might also not look into it.
Hmm.
They might just treat you as just another product, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So it in fact, if you are able to get that PR part cracking,
Hmm.
uh, almost 90% of your marketing would be cracked. You
Yeah.
have a very solid product in
Hmm.
place. So
Hmm.
that's what I realized the whole process.
Yeah, yeah. Not just with PR, right? With any kind of marketing for a startup, the biggest challenge is for an entrepreneur is self-censoring. Telling
Right.
yourself, "Oh, it's not worth it. Why should I call someone and get a response?" And I
Right.
think that's one of the things that entrepreneurship really, really teaches you. You to get over your own doubts and to say that let someone else tell me whether this is worth talking about or writing about. And
Very true.
if this has helped you in creating new products, then that has kind of achieved the mission, because now you're able to think from a much broader perspective. What is it that really is wow for a larger set of audience, and what is it
Yeah.
that adds credibility to you? Of course, with PR, I mean, digital marketing aside, but even with the audience that you are targeting, parents and corporates, for them, yes, print media is still the most credible thing. If something has
Correct.
made it to the newspaper, then it's worth looking at it, one more time. So,
Yeah.
I think you have not only understood your audience well, you've also understood what is the channel that really makes a difference to them, and I believe that
Yeah,
that's what an entrepreneur should do. Whether print media is useful for everyone or not, that is a decision that they have to make, knowing who is it that they are targeting.
correct.
So that's great. And you still have a relationship with this person that you reached out to so many years ago. I mean,
Oh,
is it an
yes, very
ongoing
much.
thing? Yeah, yeah.
In fact, that person actually went on to do his graduation, post graduation. I'm still in
Mm,
touch with them.
yeah.
I'm still in touch with them in LinkedIn, and they also inquire about
Mm,
something. And the journalist network is actually quite small. There are not many, um, unlike engineers, there are very small network. I mean, the number of people who are journalists, who are working as
mm,
journalists, is very
mm,
small.
mm,
So most of them move from one organization to the other organization. That also happens.
yeah.
So one person works with a newspaper, they move on to um, say a digital media. So they
Mm,
again want to feature you because
mm,
for that particular audience, it's actually new.
yeah.
So it's actually makes sense for you to not just for in your own interest. It also makes sense to just to be in touch. You don't really have to treat them as, so I'm going to get something from them, I'm going to give something
Correct.
from them. You can just be friends. I mean, um, you probably never know what's going to happen
Mm,
with someone. They might put you on and put you in touch with someone else. They know
mm,
they could be your
mm,
investor. So
mm,
a lot of things can happen.
correct.
So I would want to treat them as just a normal human being, and
Mm,
their profession is journalism. And I'm sharing my story. If they're interested, they will feature it. Otherwise, they'll just remember.
yeah.
Even if that particular service is going to be of use for one family member, then
Mm,
I probably had seeded my idea to them,
mm,
which could benefit one more member. So
mm,
who's probably your customer,
mm,
right? Um, so it works out. I don't see a loss in
mm,
reaching out to a journalist at all,
yeah.
because you never know what's going to happen with that.
Correct, correct. And the relationship side of it is what really the PR agencies do well as well, right? They have a
Right.
relationship with a network of journalists, and whatever
Correct.
client comes to them, they understand what is it that can be fed as stories to the journalist. So you may not always get a full article written on you, but you could potentially have quotes or something, have an opinion on something that is trending.
Right.
So you've obviously done that yourself, because over time you have also started to understand what is it that is important to the journalist. So whether it's
Yeah.
sharing your story but also sharing other people's story, because that kind of helps the journalist in their career as well, right? Because
So there is a
everybody wants to
lot of
feature a good story. Yeah.
yes, there's a lot of overlap also which can happen. For
Hmm.
example, they might not feature you right now,
Yeah.
but your game can, or whatever your product which you are designing, can
Hmm.
fit into a overall scheme of things. For
Yes.
example, someone wants to feature about a game for Children's Day which is on financial education.
Hmm.
They might not have featured my game, Big Bull Junior or Belly Battle
Hmm.
there, but
Hmm.
they would want to include that game as part of the other games which they are writing. So
Hmm.
that can also happen. So, but for that to happen, you need to reach out to them saying that, hey, I have a game which is on financial literacy,
Yeah.
or financial inclusion. So
Hmm.
that's when that connect will happen.
Hmm.
So I think as a lot of people say, it's like connecting the dots.
Yeah.
So right now, what we are trying to do is just make as many dots as possible. The
Yeah.
connection might happen much later.
Hmm.
So I don't think we should even be worried about it.
Hmm.
Even if that one connection is going to fetch you probably one client, or
Hmm.
even if that's not going to fetch you a client at all,
Yeah.
just be in touch with that person is not going to do any harm.
Hmm.
So that's exactly what we are trying to do here.
Yeah. All right. Great. So this was a good conversation to have. And I mean, of course, PR is the main thing that we talked about. But I think at the core of it all was I took away two things. One was that you had a very clear understanding of what it is that you were doing and who does it benefit. Because if the story is not set in your head, you're unable to explain it to someone and say, here's the benefit of, featuring this. This really
That's
is the
true.
power thing, right? So you have to think from their perspective. Why would they talk about it? The second thing that I took away was don't self-censor. Just do it.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Great,
that's
great.
absolutely true.
Awesome. So thank you, Santosh, for coming on the show. And I wish you all the best. Next 12 years will
Thank
be
you.
even better than the last.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pallavi. Thank you so
All
much for
right.
inviting me.
No issues. All right. Bye.
Bye.